itself.
From the
PDP. Yes, so they gave every reason, excuse for their ouster. And then this, for me, was a negotiated, event outcome. 4, 5 and a half legacy parties came together, negotiated, sat down, and discussed among themselves. And this is the way to go. And they went that way. And I keep saying, JJ just took a word out of my mouth. Lai Mohammed was the #1 weapon of the APC.
Weapon of mass destruction.
It was a #1 weapon, and it was an effective weapon. At the point, I said that
PDP came out with Fani Kayode to neutralize.
No,
that wasn't. No.
Fani Kayode does not have the credibility that
it didn't work.
Do you understand? Fani Kayode has not been taken to EFCC. I mean,
I never had.
Do you understand?
Never had.
So he doesn't have
any baggage.
No. So he has to deal with his
own baggage. He has believability.
They are not on the same platform.
Even not only on the corruption. Not only on the corruption, For Fani Kayode, if once he said something, there were about 4 things that people like you and me will say to Fani Kayode. If he says this, you can say, oh, remember your days in Ghana. Of course, you and I know what that means.
No.
So there were so many things.
Everybody has a past.
So many things
everybody has a past.
That will make people not believe him.
We're talking about live out his past.
Believability.
Live out his past.
Let's take the discussion down. Tony Waje, you want to tell us something about that? Before the election, how did the People's Democratic Party, how did the All Progressive Congress, how did they win the election before for the first time?
Yeah, just like Julie said, I think it's good. They were all out. They came out prepared for the election, and they were looking at that ball only. And it showed at the end of the day, they were ready to give in anything to get that election right, and they did. You mentioned Lai Mohammed. Lai Mohammed was ready. Anytime you give him a call, he will pick it. Even if it's 2 a.m., 3, 4, 5. That's a spokesperson for the APC. And APC knows his value. And he was ready to deploy. He never failed. But please, what I will tell him at this point is that now it's a government in power and not an opposition party.
Thank you for chipping that in. Tony Waje, thank you for chipping that in. Your perspective on this.
First of all, let me say that I think what really did it for the APC was that the whole country was tired of the PDP. And then you also saw a PDP that touted itself as the biggest party in Africa. And then they also relied so much on the issue of the power of incumbency, which is always they always deploy that tool to perpetuate themselves in office. So you always see that even in Africa, it is very difficult to defeat incumbency. So they thought because they had this one that nobody could ever do that. And especially as somebody prophesied politically, they were going to be in power for 60 years. Yeah, for somebody said that we misread him, he actually said 16. So I think that actually helped. And then again, I think one other tool that we must not forget was the part of the social media. Also worked positively for APC. That's the way I see it.
Any of our the audience to contribute to how the rise and the fall of the People's Democratic Party?
Yes, let me quickly say this. I think the Ashwadi factor is a factor that we should not just look away from like that. It is a single person in that party that determined a lot of victories for the party. Then the branding of Muhammadu Buhari, before the election, I think Mr. President had some issues with his image. You remember at some point in time, the picture emerged on social media where Muhammadu Buhari was putting on a suit. That's a real picture, and it really worked wonders for the party. Then again, like in the game of wrestling, when you are fighting an opponent and you discover that opponent has an injury on a part of his body, you focus on that part of the body and you hit him on that. The PDP had a crisis within, and APC festered on that. They look at the enemies of Mr. President, like the former governor of Rivers State, and brought him over to their camp. They became enfant terrible for the PDP, and that did it for the APC.
Brilliant one from Obade there. Any of our audience?
I would love to add that apart from the to particularly identify the vice presidential factor. The PDP was waiting for the APC to make that mistake. And then picking Professor Oshibajo just did it. He solved a lot of problems. He cut out a huge chunk of the RCCG and a lot of other churches in the Southwest. Millions of votes. He's a native of Ikene, married to the granddaughter of Awolowo, professor of law, everything tight, perfect. It was just beautiful. And then, very importantly too, the Buhari branding, if I can use it that way, was particularly from Amici. It was the one that, turned around Baba that was near permanently in Agbada and Cap. Started branding suits and, all these beautiful pictures and all Igbo attire, chieftaincy titles and stuff like that. And then before you know it, he has swept the whole country.
You didn't give us your name.
Important. My name is Ismail Amonsu.
Round of applause for
Nice one.
Moving on now, we can't afford to dwell more. The election was won and lost eventually, and it got to another stage. It's as if the All Progressive Congress weren't ready, for governance. When they started out, it was as if the aim and objective of all these strange bedfellows coming together was just get Goodluck Jonathan out of the way. Get Goodluck Jonathan out of the way. The National Assembly crisis, the formation of the cabinet. Jide.
Yeah, I've been really disappointed about the way things have gone. I believe that this government should have sorted a lot of things out earlier than now. Look at how long it took for the president to put a cabinet list together. And Nigerians were saying, oh, he's trying to pick
almost 130 days.
He's trying to pick the best. But invariably, when the list came out, they turned out to be familiar faces. So what was
somebody said he would have mentioned that he would have given us that list on the 30th of May, a day after swearing in.
Yes, that is
that
the
if it was going to be Rotimi Amechi, Babatunde Fashola, Audu Ogbe,
and all of those people, all of those supporters of his at CPC that eventually found their way to that list. These are people that he had known, Obaka Malami. These are people that he had known for years. At Disirika, all of them. He had known these people. He had known them for long. So why did it take so long? Now, when some people want to poke fun at some of us supporters of the president, they say that, okay, the president was told to hit the ground running. But the president hit the ground and sat there. So, because things are really, things are generally slow. The fuel scarcity is taking so long, you can't solve the problem. So people want to see a government that is focused, that will solve problems quickly. I know that it's not easy, but a lot of our people are becoming really impatient.
Okay, remember. Let me first take. Let's take our first intervention for today. First caller in the year, Sani. This is a lucky one. Sani is calling from Niger State. Thank you for Sani for keeping faith with journalists. Hangout. Hello, Sani.
Hello. How are we?
Very well, thank you, Sani.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Thank you very much for what you are doing. Yeah. What I am thinking is, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo has played a very good role.
Okay, that's another factor.
Connect every reasonable Nigerian and international people to see that Nigeria has free and fair, credible election, and he achieved that.
Thank you, Sani. 60 seconds for our callers. 60 seconds, just make your contribution, and we'll forge ahead. Formation of his cabinet, Boyega.
Well, I wouldn't want to fault Mr. President for delaying. I'm one of those who believe that it needed time. Don't forget that.
How many months did you want him to take?
Well, for as long as the president felt it was necessary.
It would have taken 4 years.
Don't forget that the Constitution is actually silent on this.
No. So laws are made for human beings.
So, Tony,
we are not going to be slaves to our own laws.
Well, it doesn't.
So if you don't need 1 million years to set up a cabinet, if you need just 2 days to set up a cabinet, why not do that?
Okay.
Does it happen in other countries?
to give me a Lai Mohammed, it has to take.
No, so you needed.
You also need to balance it with what the president said, that he made so much rot, and that the handover note. And that was where I began to
handover had nothing to do with picking ministers, my brother. It had nothing to do with picking ministers.
Now, he said the handover was, given to him like the day before. And he needed to understand, not the ministries. He wanted to understand the ministries. He wanted to see the running of the ministries. By the time he appoints his ministers, he won't come back to him and start, telling him stories. So that one is just, I think the most important thing for me is that we have a functional cabinet.
All right, Lekon.
Not how long it took the president.
Lekon, your intervention on this, quickly.
My intervention. Well, I hope nobody will accuse me of being the president's spokesperson. So my approach is this, that four and a half legacy passages came together. That is 4.5 different tendencies coming together, merging, and then J.S. Tucker said that he was in politics for service and for gain. A lot of our politicians are certainly in government, in politics for service and for gain. And I think it's more weighted around gain than of service. So, and you see what happened in the National Assembly. The party dictated a direction, and people went a different way.
Yes, because we're still coming to that.
Exactly. So that, I think, was one of the issues that affected Mr. President. And then he said something. He said he wanted to, I will explain myself. He said that he wanted to sort of, would you say, streamline the government, so that he will know the ministries that he needed, the jobs that he wanted to emphasize, and then he will now look for the men who fit into that.
Okay, let me
that's my understanding.
I have Buhari from Niger State. A round of applause for our viewers from Niger State. In the last 3 months, we have average of 4 or 5 calls from Niger State every day. Thank you for joining us, Buhari. Happy New Year.
Good evening.
Happy New Year. Good evening.
You have 60 seconds, Buhari.
Yeah, it's Buhari on the line.
Yes, Obade is keeping the time for you.
I can only talk about this change of a deal.
Go ahead.
So the change, the change between the PDP and APC, they work hand to hand. And that's what all about.
We are having problem. Buhari, please try and call back. We're having problem with that audio. Intervention, the composition of Mr. President and Minister from the gallery. Okay.
No, he has a microphone.
Okay, I would like to agree with Lekon a little bit and disagree with Jide. My name is Adidayo. I'm not too sure he's looking for the ministers. He knew the ministers even before he was sworn in. But I think the major reason the delay was that long was because of he was trying to streamline the ministries from 42 to 24. So it's not something he could have done within a space of 2-3 months.
That also affected the SFG and the chief of staff?
No, see. We are talking about the cabinet.
Yes.
Okay, those were
his kitchen cabinet.
Even to pick his kitchen cabinet was work.
The kitchen cabinets.
The chief of staff, the secretary to the government of
the man said he came into a system where there is no money to even fund those people. Do you know how much he saved within those period that he has no kitchen cabinet?
That's it.
How much?
He saved a lot of money.
Do you know how much he saved?
How many months?
He saved a lot of money.
I mean, I don't know, but we can guess how much he saved.
Moving on,
right?
Moving on now. The National Assembly. Immediately the 7th Assembly, the 8th Assembly was inaugurated. Abubakar Bukola Saraki usurped his party and he became the Senate President. Jide.
I mean, that was a coup.
Well,
Jide, they asked me to take a call from Messi. Messi is calling from Niger State. Nasir from Niger State.
Nasir.